Hello everybody, it's Daniel, OnionGravy64 or Civil Onion based upon how you know me. Welcome back to Pokemon of the Week, and believe it or not, the random number generator conjured up 3 electric types in the NU tier in a row. This week it's Luxray, number 405 in the Pokedex, and as I've just said, it's a pure electric type. So you may know, if you watched the previous 2 weeks already, what the type weaknesses and resistances are. Weak to ground and resist electric, flying and steel. Unfortunately, Luxray does not have an ability that can make it immune to electric like Raichu did a couple of weeks ago, but its 3 abilities are very interesting nonetheless. Rivalry, you don't see it very often, however what it does is that if Luxray is the same gender as the opposition, its attack gets a 25% boost. If it's a different gender, its attack is cut by 25%, and if you're facing a Pokemon, for example like a Starmie, which has no gender, the attack stat stays as it is. Intimidate, when Luxray switches in, knocks the opponent's attack stat down by 1 unless they have Defiance, so a Pokemon like Bravery or Bisharp for example, both have their attacks actually raised by it, so do be careful. Its hidden ability is Guts, wherein if Luxray has a status effect, its attack goes up. So all of these are attack based abilities, and when you look at the base stats you can see why, because its best stat by a mile is its attack stat. Other than its attack being very impressive, most of its stats are average. Nothing really sets the boat out there as being incredible. Its special attack at 95 is pretty good, but its HP, defense, speed and special defense are all in the meh category. Actually, by having base 80 HP and 79s in each defense, it is very much right in the middle of what an average generic defensive combination is. Because we generally say as Pokemon experts that 80s across the board is an average stat, especially in NU. Base 80s are probably sufficient if you invest in it to be defensively biased. That may be a foreshadowing comment regarding later part of this video. However, I want to quickly say something first. This week, for the Pokemon, the Smogon website has been down completely. They've suffered a cyber attack. So people that are cynical and think that I look directly at the Smogon website for such things as these, physically unable to do so this week. So if you go back on the website and you see that these sets are quite similar, that's just proof that I know the metagame very well, rather than I'm copy and pasting off a website. So anyway, let's get to the first set. And there are 3 ways that I'm going to show you how you can attack with Luxray, and then we're going to have a final 4th set. I know I'm spoiling you with 4 sets this week, to show how you can go more defensive route. So the first way of using Luxray is to use Howl, and unfortunately Howl's not the greatest of stat boosting moves. It only boosts your attack by 1 stage every time you use it, so it's like half as useful as a Sword Stance. However, you're in the NU tier, so don't worry too much about it. After you've raised your attack by a stage, usually, you can go for Wild Charge, which would be your default choice. Wild Charge does cause recoil damage to you at 25% the amount of damage you do. However, it is a lot stronger than Spark or Thunderfang, which would be your other alternatives, because you may be unsurprised to know that Luxray can't learn Thunder Punch. It doesn't really have fists now, does it? Anyway, when it comes to coverage moves, Luxray isn't really blessed with the best. However, it does have access to Superpower, and most Luxray sets will use Superpower. There's one set that I will show you later that does not, and I will explain why. But you get a few options. You can use Crunch. Crunch, you may think it's a bit mediocre, but in NU there are a lot of psychic types that aren't particularly brilliant, so you'll be able to hit them super effectively. Your other alternative for the 3rd move slot is Facade, and I've put an asterisk next to it because that is very foreshadowing to the next set. But some people run Facade on this just in case, more for utility purposes. However, the final move is a very important one when it comes to utility. Fire Fang hits grass types that you would normally struggle against. Ice Fang hits dragons, which you would normally struggle against. Obviously, Wild Charge is neutral to dragon flying. However, Ice Fang can really cover against the dragon ground types, which obviously electric can't do anything to. Your final alternative is to use Quick Attack, and you may think that's a really poor choice. However, Luxray doesn't get any priority move outside of Quick Attack, So if you want to quickly have a Pokemon with a priority move in NU, which is not that common in itself, but it's a very useful attribute to have, that is where you would put it. Nature-wise, you can have Jolly or you can have Adamant. In the NU tier, your base 70 speed is nowhere near as bad as it looks. So often you'll go for Adamant. If you're using Luxray in a higher tier than NU, good luck to you, first of all. But if you do intend to, I would run Jolly, because you want to try and outspeed. And after all, you've got Howl to increase your attack anyway. Second note, if you choose not to run Facade, which on this set very much is usually the case, you can use Rivalry as the ability rather than Guts. But you have to be very, very careful. You have to make sure that your Luxray is male, because obviously Rivalry basically improves your attack if the opponent's Pokemon is the same gender as yours. And when it comes to Wi-Fi battling and competitive battling on simulators, out of all Pokemon that have genders, 95% of them are male, and I'll tell you for why. When you're designing a Pokemon on simulator, the default gender setting is male, and people don't bother changing that. As a result, make sure your Luxray is male. There are less males when you're playing on DS Wi-Fi, but if you're doing simulators in particular, it's a banker to make it male. EV investment wise, maximise your attack and speed, that is brutally obvious. But item wise you have a choice, because if you run Life Orb, obviously you get a 30% power bonus, but you take recoil damage. And as Wild Charge is a recoil damage move in itself, and you've got Guts, you'll probably be trying to switch in onto a Toxic or a Will-O-Wisp, you're going to lose your HP ridiculously quickly. So the Expert Belt is a very viable alternative, because obviously that does not contribute towards extra recoil damage, but it still gives you a nice power boost. If you're using Facade though, you probably don't want to use Expert Belt, because obviously Facade cannot hit super effectively, therefore nullifying the entire use of Expert Belt. So we'll go for the second method of attacking with Luxray, and that's by putting a Choice Scarf on it. Now I'm pretty certain that a Choice Band set would be on the Smogon website. I'm not absolutely sure about that. However, I personally, from experience of using Luxray, I'm not a fan of using Choice Band on it. It's too high risk, because Electric, which is obviously your stab move, and Superpower, which is a move that is almost always on a Choice Luxray, they are both moves, being Electric and Fighting respectively, which can be immune to. Obviously there are a lot of abilities now like Lightning Rod or similar effects that can absorb Electric. There's also ground types which are immune to it, and then with Superpower any Ghost type is immune to it. So as a result, being locked into these is a very, very dangerous thing to do. And at least with the Choice Scarf, if you're able to get away, you can then use it again as a revenge killer later. Whereas if you get your prediction wrong with your Choice Band, you might find that you can never use your Luxray ever again because it doesn't outspeed anything. That's why I've said the Choice Scarf is the best option here. When it comes to cover move though, you've still got the choice of whether you want Fire Fang or Ice Fang. Ice Fang is the more common one. Simple reason for that is because you don't tend to use Luxray in particularly high tiers, so you really don't need to hit Bug Steel types 4 times super effectively, but I have put it there just in case you want to do such a thing as that. And the final move slot might be a weird one. You might think, why on earth do you have Volt Switch in there? I will tell you why. It's because if you have a team that has a lot of type coverage moves already, having a choice user with a momentum move, so U-turn or Volt Switch, can make prediction a lot easier for you. It is the kind of option where if you're on a very offensive minded team, having a momentum move is very useful. If you're not very good at predicting, Volt Switch is a nice way of getting around that. And even though the nature is adamant, you can alternatively switch your ability to not be a negative to special attack and instead be a negative to a defense. If you're intending to use Volt Switch a lot, because your base 95 special attack, even uninvested, is not too bad. It's not fantastic. Obviously the ability Guts does not affect your special attack positively in any way, but at least it gives you a bit more versatility, and it makes prediction, like I said, a lot easier because you're switching out when you hit. Obviously U-turn would be preferable, but Luxray does not learn U-turn, so it's a shame. The EVs are exactly the same as the first set, and speaking of exactly the same, set 3 has exactly the same EVs as well. Literally the only difference between the 3 attacking methods is just how you use it, and it has a very slight change in moves, because Luxray's move pool is not enormous, it's reasonable, it's good enough, but it's not setting the world alight. So this is the 3rd way of using Luxray offensively, and it's to really utilise guts. So you put a toxic or a burn orb on it, or alternatively, if you're a really good player, try and switch Luxray in once toxic spikes have been laid, and therefore you can put whatever item you want on top of that. But for safety purposes, toxic orb and burn orb are the way to go. Just try and switch Luxray in on something, because that way you don't have to waste a turn for it to affect you, because it'll burn or toxic you, whichever you've picked, at the end of the turn of which you've switched in. And from there you can hit things as hard as you can. Electric and normal together is good neutral type coverage. Not quite as good as water and normal, but for type coverage on the neutral front, not bad. And you are hitting with a very high base attack, so hitting neutrally is very important. Crunch is there to hit ghost types that are either resistant or immune to electric, so Golurk is the key one there. And your final move, you can either again pick Volt Switch for momentum, but more likely you're going to pick either Ice Fang or Superpower. And you need one of these to cover the many ground rock types that kind of idle in NU and RU and around that ballpark. There are quite a few of them. It is very important, however, that you do realise that Ice Fang and Fire Fang, for that matter, albeit not on this set, only have a base power of 65. That is lower than Hidden Power Ice, when, assuming you've done it properly, or Hidden Power Fire respectively. As a cover move, you should only use it when you absolutely need to, because most of the time, even if you're only hitting not very effectively, your stab move will do more damage. Wild Charge after stab has more power if it hits neutrally than Ice Fang if it hits double super effectively. So always bear that in mind. Superpower is your other alternative. However, the problem with Superpower is that obviously it lowers your attack and your defense by 1 stage each. And by doing that, you effectively are going to stop your sweep. Because even with the Guts boost, having a -1 onto your attack applied means that Luxray tends to not be able to one-hit KO anything anymore. So do be very careful when you choose to use that. Only use Superpower the turn before you think you're going to have to switch out, is my advice to you. So there we are. Final thing I want to say before you go though, and go and like the video and comment on it, or whatever you're going to do. We're going to talk about its defensive capabilities. And Luxray has a lot of opposition with Electros in the defensive electric type role, and there are advantages and disadvantages to using Luxray. Key advantages: Raw is 100% accurate as a phasing move. Electros has to rely on Dragon Tail, which is not 100% accurate, I believe it is 90% accurate. Luxray also has Intimidate, which means your defense, albeit only base 79 naturally, actually is a lot better than that once you've lowered the attack. However, do be careful of Pokemon with Defiant as the ability, because obviously you will increase their attack, so you do have to be rather careful what you switch into. The other real debating point though is that Raw, albeit 100% accurate, is affected by Taunt, and you can't use it when you are taunted. So it swings and roundabouts. Also, because we're investing in our physical defense, the 252 EVs in defense and HP there, your special defense is really quite poor. And as a consequence, don't try and phase out lots of powerful special attackers, because it will not work for you. When it comes to your choice of attack move though, to go alongside your Sleep Talk and phasing move, you can go for Wild Charge. However, the reason people don't tend to do this is because you're taking recoil damage on a defensive Pokemon, which is why Discharge is there instead. Unfortunately, it does utilise your weaker special attack stat. However, Discharge is, 1, it's 100% accurate, and 2, you've got a 30% chance of paralysing each time you use it. So it is pretty good for utility. Its base power of 80 is also nothing to sniff at. Like I said, there's a lot of competition against the Electros to be the defensive Electro type, and Ampharos to a degree as well, last week's Pokemon of the Week. But Put it this way, people will not expect your Luxray to do this, so you'll definitely have the surprise factor on your side. The choice of nature depends on whether you go for wild charge or discharge, respectively, obviously one being physical, one being special. And as a result, if you use wild charge you want to be impish, and be bold if you're going to use discharge. So before I go, I want to reconfirm that Pokemon of the Week will last 40 episodes, and episode 40 will be special. Remember to send your sets in at either the email or the Facebook page there, the links are there for you to see. If no one submits, I get a very easy time, because I basically get to say, episode 40, I'm going on holiday, bye! So if you want to see an actual special, you do have to get involved. Peace out, everybody.